So management is one of those things that I think, management is basically a job entirely based on contacts, right? Because management is a lot, management is actually dependent on how big the band is. So if you're going to work with a small band, you're doing a lot for them in management, right? Because they probably don't have like a booking agent and a PR person and, you know, whatever, because they can't afford to pay. So you're probably also, you know, under management probably also involves doing some PR, doing some marketing, maybe being at the merch table sometimes, stuff like that. If you're working with bigger bands, management is a lot more specifically about like dealing with the band and sort of being that intermediary between like the PR person, the booking agent, whatever. I'm going to assume for most of the people here that we're going to talk about small stuff because you have to manage the small bands before you can get to the big bands. I think that because management is a business, also based on contacts, it is really great if you can get an internship in it at all at first. There are many companies. C3, I've mentioned them before, is a really great management company also, and there are also a lot of smaller ones where it would be, I don't want to say it's easy to get an internship there, but I think for a lot of people, if you have at least a little experience and you have a little passion, and not experience related to management, but just experience working with music at all, it's pretty easy to get an internship. But let's say for whatever reason, you either can't get an internship or you just, there's no time. You want to jump in right away. You need to come to a band and you need to show them that even though you don't necessarily have the experience and the contacts, you want to make them. Because you can't just go and meet people and necessarily and be like, oh, like, I'm going to be a manager someday, right? Like, you meet people because you're like, I have this really great band, and you need to see them, and you need to talk to them. And if you're someone who's not cool with cold calling, or not cool with, you know, is shy, is nervous about talking to people you don't know, like, this is not the job for you. But if you just say, come to a band and say, like, I'm hungry, I want this, and let me take you on for 2 months to prove it to you. Like, let's do a trial period. And that's great, right? Because, like, side note, I advocate as much as possible getting everything in writing so there's no misunderstandings, even if there's no money involved. Like, even if you're doing things for free and there's absolutely no money involved, please get it in writing. And if you even want to get it like I find, to me it's fine to just like type up a contract yourself, but if you want to get it legally done, there are tons of lawyers in Austin. Just Google like pro bono music lawyers who understand that people in the music business and artists don't have a lot of money and are totally willing to do either pro bono or incredibly cheap work for you or for a band. Anyway, but say like 2 months, whatever, trial period, and then just bust your ass and be like, okay, let's say I have, I work a lot with like indie rock and punk rock bands, right? Or actually, you know what, here, I'll give an example myself because I still do work with a band called Mother Falcon. They have a manager now, we found a manager, but for a long time I was sort of doing more of the management type stuff. Now I'm more like merchandising and marketing stuff. I didn't have a ton of contacts when I started working with them, right? They're like an orchestral indie rock band, but they have a story, right? They're an orchestral indie rock band. And so I went to some people that I didn't know, right? And like, maybe you know some people who, again, like work at a restaurant that you could book them a gig at or something like that. Or maybe you even just research and you're like, here's a writer at the Houston Chronicle who wrote this really glowing review of a Barut show, and if they like Barut, they're gonna love Mother Falcon, so I'm gonna email them and send them these MP3s and be like, hey, would you be interested in, writing a blurb about Mother Falcon? Because they're coming to play a show in your city in a few weeks or something like that, right? Like, have that story, and just do everything, like, even if you think there's no way in a million years someone's going to read that email, go for it, send it, do it, because you never know what is going to happen. And there are tons of emails that I've sent thinking, never going to hear from someone again. And 75% of the time, I don't. But that 25% of the time is so rewarding and so awesome. And so I think that if you want to manage a band, you believe in the band, right? Like if you're putting your ass on the line to work with this band, you have a story, you think they're special, that's when management really works. Like, management doesn't really work when you're dealing with bands that you don't really care about. Like, that's a really good management professional, right? You'll get to that place at some point, but you know you're really good at managing when you can take a band that you could care less about and, like, sell them really well. But at the beginning, you're finding bands that you really care about, and you just need to impart that passion. And again, you know, cold call booking agencies, I think one of the greatest things from working at Transmission that I learned is that if you come to us and you're like, I'm a band and I want to play at X, Y, you know, at a venue, play a show, whatever, we're like, that's cool, whatever. We get 1,000 emails a day, maybe we'll listen to this, maybe we won't. But if you email us and you're like, I saw that in a month or two, Real Estate is playing at Mohawk and the opening slots aren't filled, and I sound like a band that could open for Real Estate, and here's some MP3s, and here's why, and I would love to play, and I would play for $100 or $500 or free or whatever you want, and give us these specific things, then we're going to open that email and be like, oh, cool, like, they want to open for Real Estate, they want to open for, you know, because then you're giving us really specific, helpful information. And so again, if you're managing a band, doing things like that, of finding really specific things to pitch to, of like, this is where this band would fit in, this is where this band would make sense, instead of sending out really general emails of like, oh, I want to work with you at this company and do this thing.